they're still going to be asking your students a question. And before I get into on the outside, what's the name of the evil corporation that made this test in the first place? No, higher than them? TEA. They hired Pearson. The reason that a lot of your students struggled when it came, just one, two, not even that one. Plug it in. She started laughing at me yesterday because we were testing the TV, and I kept doing like 1,000 things to troubleshoot. But I wasn't realizing you actually have to connect the HDMI cable to your computer in order for it to be able to project an image. And so a lot of times you're pouring your heart out into your students, but there's not a connection that's happening. Double check, troubleshoot what's going wrong here. Okay? So TEA. They're going to be asked a question about a certain what?
Topic.
Regarding TEKS, a certain Texas Essential Knowledge and Skill. But what a lot of you did, because your district or your regional service center told you to, you started restating the question. And SCR stands for Short Constructed Restating. No, it doesn't. Short Constructed Repeating. No, it doesn't. It stands for Short Constructed what?
Response.
They just wanted an answer. And so, yes, you can restate. You can repeat. But let's say this together. Respond.
Respond.
With or without.
With or without.
Restating.
Restating.
Respond.
Respond.
With or without.
With or without.
Repeating.
Repeating.
So that's the main thing is they have to actually what?
Respond.
That's why it's called SCR, responding. Okay? So my suggestion is instead of going straight from the question and restating it and repeating it, they were like, dude, we already know the question. Stop telling us the question again. We're not stupid. Go straight to the E, the evidence. Look for some evidence that's based on this question, because we're going to sometimes tell you what paragraph to go to and look for evidence in that paragraph or that stanza or that section. And they're going to ask you to tell your kids to come up with at least one example. Help me?
Example.
One or more.
One or more.
That's what the TA rubric says. I don't need 3 examples of evidence because it's called short. If you can at least find one piece, it's like taking a puzzle and saying, if this is the whole passage, I don't need the whole passage. I don't even need a whole paragraph. I don't even need a whole sentence. I'm going to use that piece of that sentence, and I'm going to turn it into a sentence because all I need is one piece of evidence. Example. One or that's what the TA rubric says. If your regional people would take the time to look at it, that's what it says that was needed. Okay? I don't need 17 examples on a short construct because that's a reading skill. It's a what?
Reading skill.
They're not testing their writing, so they can't be asking you to explain a bunch of stuff. But like this, please, and say question.
Questions.
Topic, a certainty, okay? And some of the schools were having said, show me some evidence, some evidence, some evidence, some evidence, some evidence. I'm like, dude, are you an octopus or what?
Yes.
Yeah, she is. But evidence, all they needed was, if they found one piece of evidence that connected with the question they asked your kids, and then you said, now I need to respond to it in a complete sentence, give you an answer, then you just did exactly what they asked to get a 2. Does that make sense? Okay? So help me, TEA.
TEA.
Look at the topic in the question, go straight to the E, and find how many?
One or more.
Piece of evidence, try to write it in a complete what?
Sentence.
And then answer the question. Now, everybody go like this, please. What did I write first? The E or the A? Because the answer has to be based on what? Not the words in the question. That's why a lot of your kids weren't getting it correct. They were restating the question, but not actually answering it. So let's go like this together. They used to have these things in playgrounds called teeter-totters. Ready? Say evidence, and response
Equals.
whatever number we're on right now. 2. Okay? Change your and to an or. Ready?
Evidence or response equals 1.
If you can give me one or the other on that type, you at least got 1 point. Now go like this, please. And say nor. They asked them a question, and they couldn't find any evidence, and they couldn't find any answer that made sense. Right?
Evidence or answer equals 0.
And if 2 people felt like it deserved a 0, they had to get the 0. If there was a 0 and a 1, they threw those 2 scores out because they were graded by humans. If there was a 1 and a 2, they threw them out. If there was a 0 and a 2, they threw them out. Both readers had to have a score on short answer that matched. So if they got a 0, you had that kind, that meant 2 people felt like your student did not answer the question or give evidence. Okay? All right. The third goal for today is ECR. Okay? This one?
I have a question.
Yes. I love that you stopped me. Everybody get this? We're going to do this? There's a song. Stop. No, you're going to change it. Stop when you have a question. Because I'm not going to stick to my PowerPoint. I'm not going to be reading from a binder for 6 hours. I'm not reading Academy. I'm Bill. So if you have a question, I'm going to stop. And I'll stop a million times. I'm going to go as slow or as fast as I need to go to help everybody in this room. Does that sound reasonable? Okay.
Okay, so if they...
Hold on. Stand up, please. I cannot do this. This is called a dimple. Everybody say, right dimple. Closing quotations. She was using evidence from the passage, but her closing quotations are there. She forgot her opening quotation. So you might tell her, Mijo, sweetheart, if you're going to go ahead and quote the evidence, you might want to put the dimples on both sides before whatever they said and afterwards. All right? Is it corny? Yes, but kids are going to pay attention. Oh, who's the one that they said had both dimples? So they're going to keep looking at some kid in the classroom. Hey, can you smile, please? And this is cheating. If you go on the board, on your whiteboard, and make a smiley face, and put quotations on the left side and quotations on the right side, that's called cheating on test day. Because you're giving them a strategy that's going to help them with the test. So if you put that every day until test day, and then you erase it on test day, that's not cheating. Okay, so ask your question, Dimples.
So if the question gets kicked out, right, like if there's a discrepancy of one...
Hold on, discrepancy. High vocabulary.
If a rater rates the response as a 1 and somebody else rates it as a 0, and you said it gets kicked out, what does that mean for the student? They don't get a score? Or...
No, they will. Every grader, some of you might be graders, what they do is they have to match on those because it's so short. It's kind of, or supposed to be kind of easy to tell if there's truly evidence that connects to the question, and then an answer connects to the question. So the director of that group or the manager of that group will have to do it, or sometimes they assign, but because we were running out of time, probably what happened, the director had to step in and assign whatever score that it was, so he knows more. So, too many teachers, because they were grading 250 to 350 essays a day per person and short answers per person, they were getting mentally exhausted. And so when your brain is fried, you might not be able to calibrate your brain to actually find an answer. So that's why some of the scores, watch me please, the scoring that was here, and most of the essay scores were here, but sometimes the essays that deserved to be down here got scores that were up here because they were like, oh, that looks better than the other ones. No, don't compare it to the other essay, compare it to the scoring guide. And so they recalibrated right in the middle of the testing because they felt like teachers were giving scores that were too low and that too many teachers and school districts would get upset. So they sent them more essays to count that were calibrated to slightly higher scores. And so that's why, if you notice, right about in the middle of the scoring, when they did the recalibration for graders, the teachers or school districts who were graded in the second half of the scoring had higher scores typically than the ones who were graded in the first half. And to me, that's called manipulating the data and unfair because it wasn't a balanced system for everybody across the state.
That's what they're still doing. That's why we don't have accountability. They're still manipulating the data. I call it their voodoo.
And we should see how many tickets I have. Okay, again, that's for personal what? Opinion. So everybody say this, please. State your opinion. Don't let anybody tell you that a kid cannot use the word I or me or my. Because if they ask them for their central idea, their opinion, they don't care how many times that shows up as long as they're explaining what they think, what they feel, what they believe about an idea. It wasn't first person, second person. Do you know how to explain regardless of the point of view that you use? TA has said that 1,000 times because somebody keeps saying, grade them down if they use writing first person. It's like, dude, I only know what I know. It's illogical to grade a kid lower because he's not writing in second or third person. It's stupid. So TA will never grade your kids down for using personal pronouns that have to do with first person. When they show first person to somebody who don't understand, go like this. Say I, me, we, us. If I'm part of it, that's first person. So they don't care if you use those words as long as you're explaining about that topic that you've been assigned. Okay? Did that answer your question, Dimples?
Thank you.
All right. We'll give you some extra tickets. So part of our goal will be to help you because the possible scores on extended constructive responses was a 0, 0, all the way to a 5 and a 5. And what is 5 plus 5? That each grader could give you up to 5 points. Okay? Let me show you how they did that real quick. Go ahead and raise your fingers. First, they check for how is it organized. Does it have an introduction, a body, and a conclusion? Do they have a central idea? Is it based on evidence, and are they explaining? They do all those things, they can give you a 3. Then the grammar is the other 2 points. Because it's writing based, the grammar does count. And so that's how you get the 5 points. So possibly, you could get anywhere from a 0 to a 10. The actual scores in Texas, and this only happened in these grade levels. The only grade levels that had more than 50% of the kids get a total score from both readers of a 0 to a 5 were everybody. doesn't matter what grade level you taught, more than half of the kids in Texas from every single grade level got a 0, 0, a 0, 1, a 1, 1, a 1, 2, a 2, 2, a 2, 3. That's how you get a 5. Or that's. Okay. So in your opinion, if that's true, if that's what actually happened, even though they manipulated and raised the score, to still have that happen, something's wrong with the way we're teaching essays. Essay. We have to fix it. Okay? So I just wanted to make sure you were on the same page as me. So go ahead and go like this, please. How do you get a 1? Well, regardless, you get a 1 by answering the question. How do you turn a 1 into a 2? You give me evidence. How do you turn a 2 into a 3? Well, don't just give me evidence for the essay. What does it say right here? Explain and explode your evidence. So, I have a blue train and I have a green train. So everybody touch your shirt and say, first evidence. Touch your pants and say second evidence. If you're wearing a jacket or a sweater, raise your hand. You guys have third evidence. And so watch. If I have my introduction and I have 1 piece of evidence, or 2 pieces of evidence, or 3 pieces of evidence, and I have my ending, they don't care. If you're gonna give me 3 pieces of evidence, just explain all 3 of them. If you're gonna give me 4 pieces of evidence, explain all 4 of them. Let's say this together. Each evidence, example, explain, and explode. That's what will get you a 3. So circle the first 3 letters to remind yourself, I can't get to 3 land unless I've gone through 2 land and 1 land. Does that make sense? Because I can have the best answer in the world, but it has nothing to do with the question, and I have lots of evidence about something else. It's like, we didn't even ask you that. You're going to get 0. Okay? If there's nothing but evidence, and you didn't even answer the question, you're still going to get a 0. You have to make sure that the evidence is based on the answer that you gave me, and the answer you gave me has to be based on the topic that's in the what? The question. Okay? How do you get a 5? There better be a conclusion. There better be an ending. Watch me, please. I told you what this means in sign language. What is it? I love you too, but what does it mean? Yeah, that's what it means. What does this mean in sign language? It says on the rubric, if you do not have an opening or a closing, we're not allowed to give you a 3. If you're missing both, we're not even supposed to be giving you a 2. It says the introduction and conclusion are missing. And they don't mean a paragraph that's indented. They just mean, did you open your essay by talking about the what? Or your idea. Tell me. Have you talked about your topic or your idea? That was good enough for them. You didn't even have to indent. They didn't care about that. I asked them why. They said, it's because an essay is like a rough draft. We can't expect them to do it in 1 day. I'm like, well, they had all year. Yeah, but we're grading in 2 minutes when you got to teach in 2 semesters. So we're trying to be fair with your kids. Okay? So the other thing, the other 2 points, both readers have to decide, when we look at all your red, yellow, and green, your answer, your evidence, and the way you explained it, were the conventions poor, were they fair, or were they good? And so then you would get an extra 0, 1, or 2 points. And so that's how you get the 5 points from 2 different readers. Okay? So let me ask you a question. Can I explain with no evidence whatsoever? No or no? You can't go from a red light to a green light without going through the yellow light. And I know some of you do it. I do it all the time. I go through yellow light. So you better go through the yellow light. So hold up the yellow box that's at your table and say evidence. And I can't answer your question, how much evidence should be there? Well, it depends on what kind of kid you have. I'm not going to ask the kid who can barely write to give me 3 pieces of evidence if he can barely explain one. Because if I can get him to explain one, watch me, I might be able to turn that kid who normally makes a 0 or 1 into a 2. Watch for a second. Say evidence.
Evidence.
Explain.
Explain.
So my third grade, raise your hand, who's on a kinder ability level, you're going to say, sweetheart, don't even explain it right now. I'll show you how to explain it. Next time, just explain it with 1 sentence. Does that make sense? Everybody hold up your green box. You answered my question. You used what? Evidence. And you tried to what? Okay. So your Smarties are in front of you. Somebody at the table get 1 Smartie and put it in that red box. Just one. Actually open the package and put 1 singular Smartie. Okay? I'm going to do it with this table. All right. Okay, logic please. That Smartie stands for a sentence. The first sentence they're going to read is the question or the topic. But now we need to put another one in there because that question and my answer have to relate to each other. Does that make sense? Okay. Some teachers say, have a hook, have an attention getter, and that's cool, but do I have any hair? As long, even if your central idea statement, your claim, your thesis has effective word choices, to them that's effective. But if you want to add a sentence, that's okay. It's called sometimes a hook, a lead, or an attention getter. As long as it ties to your what? Or your they'll say, that's a great job. You want to put 2 minutes here, you just be careful. There's called a law. The law of diminishing returns is to start with so many sentences that you start to get off what? Off topic. Be careful with that. Okay? All right. Close it. Open your yellow. Yellow stands for evidence. I like to use yellow because it's the highlighter. Can we highlight on the computer? Can we highlight on the paper? All right. So, a piece of evidence. 5th grade, raise your hand. They told them, explain how Kim, she was our main character, even though her whole family was in the story, they only asked about 1 person. So stop telling me about the other people when we only ask about one of the people in the story. They said, how does Kim show determination? Determination is a character trait. Watch me, please. Is determination a positive or a negative character trait? It comes from the root word determine. Some kids are going to only read the first 2 syllables. Deter. Some kids are going to try to deter you. That's you. Determine is something completely different. So watch me, please. Here's my suggestion. How did Kim show determination? This is what it says. Throughout the story. What they were saying is, don't just give me something from the beginning. Give me a piece of evidence somewhere in the middle. Give me a piece of evidence somewhere towards the end. So if I have my idea, at least something came from my head about that what? They won't give a 0 for that because at least something came from their head. As long as their evidence and their idea, what? Connect. Okay? All right, get your green one, please. These are very expensive at the Dollar Tree. Is the visual helpful? Okay. How many have third graders this year on a kinder ability level? So you might have to tell them, sweetheart, just explain that piece of evidence with one sentence. Then you can tell them in the next essay, hey essay, the next time I'm going to ask you for another sentence, not this one. Is that more reasonable than asking them for, Miss, I know I'm 8 years old, but you're asking me to give you 8 sentences of explaining when I don't know how to explain? I've never been doing writing before. Well, that's why you should start with their grade. When I say their grade, I'm a third grader on a kinder ability level. That's not even a 1. So when I say their grade or more to get a good score, let's say that. Their grade or more to get a good score. Think of their grade ability, not their actual grade. I can't expect a third grader on a, she said she has 5th graders on a kinder and first grade ability level. Then I have to give a different prescription to that kid. So you might say, let's just first work on evidence. Then we'll try to explain it with one sentence. One piece of evidence explained. One piece of evidence explained with 2 sentences maybe. Then maybe the next essay, I'll give you one piece of evidence explained with what? All of a sudden I've got 3 sentences of explaining. What are the first 3 letters of explain? Well, guess what? They'll probably give that kid a 3 because he took some time to explain that piece of evidence and how it ties to your and the topic. Unfortunately, because they said, how does Kim show determination throughout the story? They're not going to probably be able to get all the points, but at least they can get some points because they at least showed determination maybe at the beginning. So you might say, for my struggling kids, I might graduate to a blue box. Do you see the blue train? I'm going to say shirt, green train, pants, blue train, jacket, sweater. Look inside your bag of monkeys, please. Are there any colors left that are not on the train track? Purple. So you could say purple could be your orange train, your third evidence. So everybody raise 2 fingers. If you're going to give me 3 examples of evidence, how many of those 3 should you explain? All 3. So watch these. If your kid gives you that third one, but there's no explaining, you, the teacher, say, revising says, in order to improve this essay, I would suggest you just remove that sentence. Don't use any evidence that you don't plan on explaining. So here's my suggestion for those kids. Everybody grab your head and say introduction, body. I'm going to get a piece of evidence from the beginning, middle, and another piece of evidence from the middle, end. And that way, I'm going to call that throughout the story. Just have them choose wisely which 2 pieces of evidence that they're going to use. And then I need an ending. So do that with your feet. Ending. Put 1 foot off the floor and say end. And that's how Kim showed determination throughout the story. Guess what? You closed by talking about the... So you just didn't mention your idea. That's better than nothing. And if you're a 5th grade teacher, raise your hand. It was through her words that were spoken and her thoughts that were not. So the central idea could have been, Kim showed determination throughout the story by her spoken words and her unspoken thoughts. If you're going to say that, that's two different what? And so they're going to check and see. If you cram two ideas down my throat, I need you to show me evidence of her unspoken thoughts, her spoken what? They both have to be explained at least. And so if
And it would have to be throughout the story. So now you're looking at 4 pieces of evidence.
yes, so what you can do for those kids who struggle, say, let's start from the beginning. Just find me one thought at the beginning and something she said in the middle end. And then we can build from there because, again, writing is a process. Does that make sense? Okay? Let me show you a little trick. Don't tell anybody I shared this with you. Ready? Say August.
August.
Most of your kids are in zero land. I'm just being honest. Some of your kids are in la la land. And you gotta try to get them to zero land. You come to it, big hole. September? One land. How do I make sure they know how to answer a question and do it in a complete what? This principal, raise your hand. Was it in your hand? Imagine a world where they say every kinder kid has to answer a question in a complete sentence. First with his mouth, as the T says, just tell me with your mouth. And I'm going to show you how to make sure it sounds like a complete thought coming out of your mouth. So when it moves down your arm, and now it's your pencil or your keyboard, it actually makes sense. But if I don't make everybody do that before they get to 3rd grade, and then you wonder why the heck they can't write in a complete sentence, that's a problem. True confessions. She said it so softly she didn't want to offend the principal behind her. They get to 9th grade and can't even write in complete sentences. Something's wrong with this world. All right. Go ahead and grab the the Smarties that were inside the first red box. Take them out. In order to make this work well, you're going to have to buy 2 of these little packages. Because you see that the engine is red, and so is the caboose. Okay, 911. In order to get the 2 or higher, you have to have an opening and a closing. Okay? But you also have to say, before I finish, I should probably check my essay for convention mistake because they won't fix themselves. My teacher's not going to come around and fix it for me unless she likes to cheat. So everybody say this, please. Hold your hand in front of you. Cross your arm and say, conclusion. Should they do a conclusion? Yeah. If your kids can write 3 sentences, great. But if all they can do is an ending, I'm good with that. I want to give you a heart and a head connection. How I feel about the topic of determination. My opinion about people and Kim because of her determination. That's called a heart and a head connection. Look at the little stick man. In case you forget, I put a heart there for you. Could you make an emotional connection at the end of the essay? Yeah. Instead of restating, you can do that. There's a brain there. You could tell me your thoughts about Kim, your opinion about this girl who never gave up, who kept showing determination. It's called you. When you look at the mirror the next time, you say, I didn't quit teaching this week. That's called determination. Sometimes it's in spite of all of those problems. Okay. So everybody say, conclusion. Conclusion. Miss, I finished. You're going to say, hey, Did you do the other part? Did you do your editing? So help me. Editing. It's the last letter in the alphabet. Say, hey, the last thing you're going to do in your essay is your conclusion and your editing. Fix the grammar because it won't fix itself. Because cups with 2 S's is right there on the right-hand side of my folder. Look at it, please. They're going to look at their folder and fix the cups. What is the C of cups? The U, the P, the first S, and the second S. Sentence boundaries. What they're going to check is, does this paper have a bunch of run-ons? Does it have a bunch of fragments? So even though you guys put lots of smarties that represent sentences, if all the student wrote was 1 period for that whole essay, their conventions would be 0. We cannot give you a 3 for organization and development and a 1 or a 2 for conventions if you can't even put a period at the end of a thought. So you'll get your points because they could read it. The only way to get a 0, here's the good news. Go like this, everybody. You say I. And as soon as you finish saying this, put it in your notes. Say I. Indecipherable. Illegible. Incoherent. According to their guidelines, they have to give your kids 0s if their boxes are indecipherable, illegible, or what? If you look at it like it's a foreign language, they have to get 0 points because they have to understand what's coming out of that keyboard. Because whatever is coming out of that keyboard was coming out of their head. A lot of kids struggle with keyboard. Okay? So help me, let's do all 3. Conclusion, editing, and the revising. Say, oh, I had 4 examples of evidence, but I forgot to explain the last one. Well then, go right there behind it, after it, click rewind, backspace, and take it off. That way you don't lose points for not explaining that piece of evidence. It's so much easier now to revise content by removing the things that you forgot to explain. Oh, I have so much repetition. Let me just put backspace on all my repetitious words and phrases. Let me explain why. Repeat after me. Capital. The reader is the eater of my words. Say it again. Capital. Is the it might be worth writing down. The reader is the teacher of my words. They're not going to say them out loud. They might because they were probably taught by the organizers. So you don't get distracted when you're writing